I would just say this is the one constant on this storm. You know, the track has been here or there, and there's been a lot of uncertainty. But the one thing that's been pretty certain is that this thing's been getting stronger very consistently and completely in line with all the forecasting. And so we anticipate this arriving somewhere in Florida as a major hurricane. It could reach for Category 4 plus winds. You know, that is a significant storm that will lead to really significant storm surge. Obviously has the possibility of having significant wind damage and destruction. But I would also say to folks, you know, if you're in an area that has flooded in past storms like Irma, you know, this is a slow-moving storm. You know, you're almost assuredly to experience flooding if this thing comes across and impacts you. So take preparations. Understand that could happen. Understand that you're likely to lose power and act accordingly. So the time to act is now. This storm is slower than thought of 4 or 5 days ago, which means, you know, we're looking at, I think, the tropical storm force winds probably coming sometime Sunday night. So make the preparations that you need. You do have some time, but that time is running out. And with that, I'm happy to take some questions.
Governor, do you think that you'll put the roads to be northbound only if these evacuations are ordered?
We have not decided to do that. I think for several reasons. I mean, one is we're still bringing in things to assist with the storm. If you noticed with the fuel, we're constantly having trucks being refueled at the ports and then going to fill up these tanks at the gas stations. We've also gotten Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi to waive their weight restrictions on trucks so that we can bring in more fuel from out of state. So that is happening. You have some places, I think Miami, 48% of the gas stations were out as of this morning. Fuel is constantly being brought in. There's other assets that are being brought in to where the storm would be. So to close off all that traffic is probably not the way we want to go right now. But also I would note, we don't see a lot of necessarily abnormal traffic right at this minute as of this morning. Now, as orders come down for evacuation, you know, that of course will change. But I think it's also important, and I was talking to the county officials here in Palm Beach County, you know, they really recommend evacuating locally. They have shelters that are that are built to withstand hurricanes. It makes it much easier to be able to do that. And so if you are in an area where you're told to evacuate, know where your shelters are, know the different options that you have. It doesn't have to be everyone in the east coast of Florida gets on I-95 and just keeps driving. You know, we know this storm is coming in a westerly direction. We know it'll eventually turn north. We don't really know where it's going to turn north precisely, and you could end up, you know, even driving into the storm if you take that route. So, but yes, we're going to have the shoulders open, so that will allow for an increased flow of traffic.
Governor, what do the water levels look like in Lake Okeechobee, and what's your confidence that those levees will hold based on the forecast?
So the water levels are lower than they've typically been. I mean, part of that is things that we were working with the federal government on really to try to obviate some of the environmental damage that was being caused by the discharges. You know, that said, you're looking at a potentially significant amount of rainfall. And so we're in contact with the Army Corps. They reported to me yesterday that they had, you know, capacity for another 4 feet. But, you know, these things, storm of this magnitude, and particularly how slow it's going, you know, has a capacity to dump an awful lot of water into the lake. And so we are in a situation where if the lake gets to a certain level, you know, they obviously have their different protocols of how they deal with that with the federal government.
Can you talk about the idea of this happening at the same time that we're expecting king tides in Miami, Fort Lauderdale?
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously, I think that exacerbates it. I mean, you look at some areas, you know, I was seeing some of the images out of Jupiter where the water's already up to the dock in some of those places. We also have other parts of the state, places like Dixie County that have been experiencing flooding. Pasco County. So even if they're on the outer bands of the storm, they're going to be in a situation where you will absolutely see water levels rise. And so when you have a strong storm, obviously the wind can cause a lot of damage, as we saw in Hurricane Michael. It obviously leads to a lot of storm surge, which can be life-threatening. But in terms of the broadest impacts of the storm, very, very likely to be because of the flooding. And so that's just something people need to understand. And I would also say is that as this storm comes, as the water rises, be very, very careful about how you're going into this. I mean, every storm, we have people try to drive through flooded streets, and their cars end up getting stuck, and that's what's going to happen. So please be very cautious with the water.
What in terms of the nursing homes that are not compliant? Is there any action the state can take immediately, or are you just advising?
Well, no. So the state is taking visits to some of them. Some of them are being contacted via phone. Now, not all of them are in the path of the storm, and so like in Palm Beach, the vast majority of them have complied. And so what we're doing is we're informing local officials. We're informing them that they're not meeting their obligations, and obviously now's the time to make alternative arrangements. I mean, I'm glad that this case came down in Broward. I'm glad it happened, but I'm glad those people are being held accountable, because I think that sends the message now going into this storm. If you have vulnerable people in your care, it's your responsibility to make sure that you have a plan in place to protect those folks. I mean, at this point, you could lose power. And so what are you going to do if that ends up happening? And so, that is really where it was responsible. We've also had, where's Eric Szilagyi, FPNL? They've written letters to all the nursing facilities about this. I don't think any of them responded to FPNL, did they? So some of them just haven't done that. And so, at the end of the day, we have a website now where you can go and click on a county, and it has all the stats and everything. And so where the potential problems are. But these folks have got to step up and protect these folks.